Recording, everyone. Okay. So thank you for joining tonight. Like I said, Laura and Don are both going to be speaking. Laura is going to be speaking first. Before I give it away to you, let me tell you a little bit about Laura. Laura Cook is the bird research coordinator at Warner Park Nature Center. She began here as a volunteer in 2016 and now helps lead our 40-year bird banding station and numerous avian research projects in Warner Park. Laura received her undergraduate degree in wildlife biology from Cornell University and her master's degree studying reintroduction methods for the endangered Mariana and Hawaiian crows from Boise State University. She lives in Franklin, Tennessee with her husband Terry, 16-year-old twins, Luna the rescue pup, and Cooper an indoor cat. So Laura, why don't you get us started and share your information with us? Like I said, I'm going to go on ahead and mute myself. And I'll be back to introduce you, Don, in just.
Okay, hi everybody. Can everybody see that okay? All right, good. Well, thank you so much for joining today. As Rachel mentioned, I'm the bird research coordinator here at Warner Park Nature Center, which is a metro park. It's a just under 3,200 acre metro park located just south of Nashville, Tennessee. And I want to talk to you. We have several different research projects that we do. We do public programming, and we also run a 40-year bird banding station. And one of the projects that I wanted to highlight for you today is about bluebirds. So I think Don's going to go into this a little bit, but in the late 1920s, a man by the name of Thomas Musselman from Illinois launched this concept of a bluebird trail and monitoring bluebird boxes. And this woman here on the left, Mrs. Amelia Lasky, became interested in that in the early 30s, started doing some work with bluebirds, and then in 1936, started a bluebird trail at Warner Park Nature Center, or at Warner Parks at the time. There wasn't a nature center there yet. And in that bluebird monitoring project has continued since then. As far as we can tell, it's the longest continuous running bluebird, Eastern Bluebird Nest Box Trail monitoring project in the US. And this is on the right-hand side is our current team of volunteers and staff. It's led by Diana McCluskey, and we go out from March through September monitoring our boxes here. I wanted to give you just a peek at what a typical season looks like for us. So as I mentioned, we have about 50 nest boxes throughout the park. This was results from last year. So we document when the first egg was laid, the number of eggs laid, how many of those hatched. We also look at nestling fledge success, how many of those actually made it to be able to leave the nest. We also try to capture adults on the nest. So last year we banded 9 adults and recaptured 8 previously banded birds. We also document if we see anything else in the nest boxes, like Carolina chickadees, tufted titmouse, and tree swallows were some of the species we had last year. Just to give you a peek at, well, I don't have a summary from all of the banding data that we have from Mrs. Lasky 1930s from 1936, but for the last 40 years since the bird banding station has been happening, we've banded over 5,900 bluebirds, and of those we have recaptured, where we capture them in future years. We recovered over 540 of those, or about 9%. But interestingly, of the ones we've recaptured, only 25 of them have been males, and that's because those males are hard to capture as adults. They don't spend much time in the nest box, and so really the only way for us to capture them is when they're actually feeding the young is really the best opportunity for us to capture them. So we don't have very many recaptures of males. One of the things though that we have learned over the past 40 years and I'm sure Don will touch on this as well, is that the bluebirds have, many of the bluebirds seem to have very strong fidelity of going back to the same nest area year after year after year. So here are a couple of examples. There's a female that nested at box number 9, and these are the subsequent years where she nested, and we recaptured her. Another one from the 80s into the 90s was recaptured in the same box year after year after year. And both of these birds from the last recapture that we had were 7-year-olds, which is getting close to that record for longevity record for female bluebirds. So that's just a little bit about what we can learn from some of the recaptures that we have. But one really exciting recapture I want to tell you about is this one right here. So this was a female that was banded as a nestling in July of 2010 at the Percy Warner Golf Course with 4 other nestlings. And it was recaptured on May 2nd, 2016 by a bander in Black Earth, Wisconsin. And this female was incubating 6 eggs. So she was 6 years old and she had emigrated over 600 miles north. And one of the things that's fascinating about this, for many species, this wouldn't really be a big or shocking thing, but we really consider our bluebirds here in Middle Tennessee as resident birds. We assume that they are born here and they spend their whole life sort of in this area. So this was an interesting recapture to see that she headed north. We decided it was love. She found somebody from the north who was down here for the winter and decided to follow him back up to Wisconsin. And this report, the information about this, if you want to find more about it, Sandy Bivens and Diana McCluskey published it in The Migrant. I think it was last year or the year before. So you can learn more about that there. So that's just a little peek at some of the results that we've had here at Warner Park. And I'm going to let Don go ahead and tell you a little bit more about bluebirds.
Okay, before you do, thank you so much, Laura. It's just fascinating to see the research that takes place here. Before you start, I'd like to introduce Don Hazel to everyone. Don and his wife, Nancy, are retired and have lived in Fairfield Glade near Crossville, Tennessee for 16 years. Previously, he lived in 5 other states while working for large corporations. He has always had an interest in nature. He writes a twice-monthly nature column for the Glade Sun and Crossville Chronicle newspapers. Don is the president of the Tennessee Bluebird Society, a member of the Friends of the Trails organization, and president of the Fairfield Glade Fly Fishing Club. So now you know a little bit about Don, and so I am going to mute myself and say.
Okay, let me make sure can you hear me, Rachel? Okay, I want to make sure I didn't mute myself. I'm going to, when I'm done here, you'll know a lot more about bluebirds than most of you know. Now, a couple of you folks like Laura and Rachel know quite a bit about bluebirds, but a lot of people I find don't. I did a presentation earlier today in Cookeville, Tennessee, and a couple of people didn't know what a bluebird was. They thought it was a blue jay was a bluebird, and some of you may be like that, but you'll know a lot more by the time we're done. We're going to talk about bluebirds. I say it's an American success story because you all know the story of the American bald eagle that they were heading for extinction because of DDT, an insecticide that was causing the eggs to be very thin-shelled and to break, and eagle populations had crashed. And they came back now because we banned DDT and helped protect them. But there's a similar story with bluebirds, and we'll talk about that and how they've made a comeback also. Tennessee Bluebird Society started about 6 years ago in Tennessee. There's Bluebird societies around the country. And I'll tell you a little bit more about our Tennessee Bluebird Society at the end. The mission of the Tennessee Bluebird Society is to promote bluebirds and other cavity nesting bird conservation. And as we go through, you'll understand what cavity nesting birds are and what other birds we're talking about that may nest in a bluebird box, may come to your yard and nest there. So the eastern bluebird, this is what it looks like. There's a male. Most of the pictures in this presentation tonight I've taken myself. There's a few I've taken from Cornell University's website, but most of the bluebird pictures I've taken, and this was taken right outside my window. I put a branch hanging off of my deck post, and just a tree branch, and I screwed it on there. And the birds love that. They come there and sit, and it's a great place to get pictures of them where there's not a bird feeder in the way or something like that. But that bird is right outside my window, and that's the male. That's what they look like. Everybody loves bluebirds. They're cute as can be. Here's another one that was sitting outside my window in the winter one time. All cold outside. The male on the top here has darker colors. The female they have the same colors, just more muted. And there's a male and a female. They're very tolerant to humans. They'll come to your deck. They'll eat suet, eat mealworms. When we check on the boxes to make sure that they're nesting okay, there's no trouble in there. Often they'll sit tight right in the box. Sometimes they fly out, but as soon as we leave, they go right back. So they're very tolerant of humans, and because of that, they're kind of fun to have around. You can get close to them, but bluebirds need our help. And as I said, the populations had dropped at one point. Here's a quote that I found someplace, and if you're in the age group that in this quote, you'll understand. In the 1980s, if you were under 40, which means if you were born 1940 or later, if you were under the age of 40, you had probably never seen a bluebird in the eastern United States, and that was true for me. At one point, my dad said he was going to build a bluebird box, and I said, "Why? That we don't have them here." I knew what they were. I had bird books. I knew what they were, but we had never ever seen one. And he decided to build a bluebird box, and eventually, actually, the next summer they showed up. But you may have never seen one back in the 80s. Between 1900 and the 80s. The population declined by up to 90%. They went from an estimated 20 million eastern bluebirds down to 2 million. And the main reason for that was house sparrows and starlings. These are both introduced species from Europe. They brought over here, people had good intentions. House sparrows, there was some kind of a worm or a bug attacking some trees in Central Park. And they thought, well, we'll bring these house sparrows over. They're very popular in Europe, and they'll take care of these bugs that are causing trouble. Problem is, house sparrows are mainly seed eaters, so they didn't do anything except expand their population over here. And starlings were brought over also. Somebody thought it was a great idea to bring all the birds ever mentioned in Shakespeare to the United States, and that's supposedly the reason starlings were brought here. These days, now in 2022, house sparrows and starlings are the two most populous birds in the whole United States. There's more of those than any other native bird. So because of that, because of those two birds and loss of nesting sites, and these guys cause the loss of nests, they take over every available nesting site, every hole that a bluebird can nest in, and bluebirds just couldn't nest. There's a male house sparrow up in the top left and a female on the bottom. They're called sparrows. Technically, they're not really a sparrow, but they're called house sparrows. They're generally found around barns where there's seed, animal feed to eat. They're found around, the best place to see these guys is go to McDonald's, Burger King, Food City, Kroger's, Lowe's. They're all in the parking lots of all those kind of stores. That's where they generally hang out. We often don't get them in suburban areas, but you can. My daughter has them in her yard up in Ohio. I don't have any here in Tennessee in my yard, but they generally hang out where there's houses and people, and they'll nest in a big colony. So these are they're non-native, they're invasive, and they'll take over every nesting site. So bluebirds don't have a place to nest, and they'll actually go in the nest and kill bluebirds right on the nest. I saw a video yesterday from a Facebook page of someplace, I think it was in South Carolina. A house sparrow was on top of the bluebird in the box, pecking on it, trying to kill it. Not because it needed the bird for food, it just wanted that nesting site. So these are a major problem. The other problem is starlings. Same thing, they'll take over all nesting sites. If you make a box with 1.5 inch hole, the starlings cannot get in there. So that eliminates the starling problem. The bluebirds aren't at risk from these birds when they're outside because they can outmaneuver them and get away. But on a nest is where they're vulnerable, and that's the house sparrow and starling problem. So, but now they're back. We're back to, it's estimated we're back to about 20 million bluebirds where we were back in 1900. And the number one reason that helped the bluebirds can recover, the absolute number one reason, is humans built bluebird boxes and put them in their yard so bluebirds had a place to nest. And when they're in your yard, you can monitor them for starlings and house sparrows. And now that they have a place to nest, the populations are back. If they can't find a hole, a cavity to nest in, they won't nest. They won't lay eggs. They don't build a nest in a tree or on the ground like some birds. They have to nest in a cavity, in a hole in a tree, a hole in a fence post, or a hole in a box in your backyard. So that is the key for the bluebird recovery. So obviously you can then help bluebirds by installing a nest in your backyard. And there's a typical looking nest right there. The couple keys about the nest that you need to watch for. Number one, it should have 1.5 inch diameter hole. 1.5 inches keeps out starlings. It allows bluebirds to get in. It doesn't keep out house sparrows, but it keeps out starlings, keeps out gray squirrels. So that's a key. It has to open. This box, I believe, opens from the top down. You have to open the box in order to check on it, but also to clean out the nest. As soon as the birds leave, you clean out the nest. This box, however, is in the absolute worst place you can put it, which is on the side of a tree. When you put the box on the side of a tree, you give access to rat snakes, raccoons, mice, ants, and they all can cause problems with the bluebirds. So that if you put a box up on a nest, I always say you're just feeding the snakes and the raccoons. It's really a bad place to put it. And I hear every week of people that say, yeah, the raccoon got my birds, or the snake got my birds, or the cat got my birds. Cats can climb right up there and get them also. The best place to put a bluebird is on a pole, like this pole here, and with a predator guard. This is called a Kingston predator guard. This protects against raccoons and snakes. Raccoons, this predator guard wobbles. It's only connected at the top. So when it wobbles, the raccoons can't climb up there. And the snakes can climb up this pole, but they can't climb around this to get up above the nest. This is a 2-foot piece of stovepipe. A 5-foot piece is even better. If you had a 6-foot snake, we had out of 350 boxes in my area, over 5 years, we had one snake get by this, and that would take a 5 or 6 foot snake, which they can get to get by this. But a 2-foot works well. We put them up high, no lower than this. Don't put them down near the ground, or the raccoon can get above it. But that's the key to keeping them safe from predators. It's called a Kingston predator guard. You can buy predator guards. Those little cone-shaped predator guards are not very effective most cases. You can make this yourself. Go to Lowe's or Home Depot, buy a 2-foot sectional pipe. Go online, and it'll show you exactly how to make this to protect your bluebirds. Here's the number one predator of bluebirds in Tennessee: gray rat snake. East of Tennessee, they call them black rat snakes. But this is one they can either be all black or patterned. They can climb up anything. They can climb up a pole. just like this, to get right up to that Bluebird box. They can climb up the side of your house. If you have a brick house, they can go right up the side of your house. You don't want to open a box and find the snake in there. But they are the #1 predator. If you open the box and all of a sudden, yesterday there were eggs and today there are none, or yesterday there were babies and today there are none, but the nest looks undisturbed, it's almost always a rat snake. They can go in there, eat everybody, and leave, and you never see them because they'll come at night. So that is what you protect against. And if they find the box once, they'll find it again. I talked to a lady last week. She said, I had 3 nestings of bluebirds last year. The snake got every single nest of babies because she didn't have it protected. Raccoons are the #2 predator of bluebirds in Tennessee. And what they do is they reach into the hole, and if you find a bluebird box with the nest partially out of the hole or laying on the ground, that's a raccoon. They reach inside and they obviously come out at night. Mother's often on the nest. They reach inside, get the mother. They rip the wings off and eat the bluebird. Then they'll eat the eggs. And they'll eat the babies. That predator guard I showed you would protect against raccoons. Some places we have some bluebird boxes on golf courses, and we can't put the Kingston predator guard on the box because, one, it doesn't look the greatest on the golf course, but #2, it would be all dinged full of golf balls where they get hit in no time at all. It would look terrible. So we use what's called a knoll guard. You may have seen these. It's a wire cage. It goes around the hole. And once the bluebird puts a nest in there and lays an egg, you can then put this over the hole, and the bluebird, if she's got an egg in there, she will find her way in. It might take them 5 or 6. I've seen tree swallows take 10 or 12 runs at this thing before they decided to land on it and then go inside. But once they have an egg in there, this knoll guard needs to be at least 6.5 inches deep or 7. Because if it's less than that, sometimes you'll make them 5.5 inches deep. We made them that way initially. Raccoons can reach in beyond that. So this depth will keep the raccoon from being able to reach inside there. If you find this in the yard, the box ripped off the pole. This was on a proper pole with a predator guard. The box was ripped off the pole, ripped in half. The eggs that were there yesterday are now missing. The bear, and we've had that happen right here in my county. It doesn't happen often, but they can smell anything that's in there. They get a fabulous nose. There were 5 eggs in there the day before, and then next morning we went out and their box was laying on the ground like that. You can't protect against that, but it only ever happened once, and the bear never came back. So, but everything is looking for protein out there, and bluebirds are at risk. I mentioned earlier that the mission was to promote bluebirds and other cavity nesting bird conversation. Well, what are those other cavity nesting birds? And we're talking about secondary cavity nesters. Primary cavity nesters are woodpeckers. They can make their own hole, and they do. They always make their own hole in a tree and build their nest in there. Bluebirds and other birds, other small songbirds, can't chisel a hole out of a tree. They have to find a hole, an old woodpecker hole, or a hole that was caused by a limb that broke off and rotted. So they're called secondary cavity nesters. And if you have a bluebird box in your yard, you may get one of these other cavity nesting birds. I just did an analysis of our 350 boxes that we monitor in public areas over here in Cumberland County. I just did an analysis yesterday, and 350 boxes, 70% of the boxes had bluebirds in them. Over 20% had tree swallows, and the rest had a few of these other birds that I'll show you in a second. So the majority of them are bluebirds, and mainly that's because we place them where bluebirds like. They like a lawn area. They like grass. They like an open area with grass, because the way they hunt is they sit up on a small tree, maybe a lamppost, maybe a rain spout, spot an insect on the ground and fly down to catch it. And if it's a grassy area like a lawn, they can see it. A field that has grass that's knee-high or higher, that doesn't work for a bluebird. They prefer your lawn. So we put the boxes on golf courses, public parks, backyards, And that's the kind of place that bluebirds like, because that's probably why we get 70% of the boxes we have out there that have bluebirds in. So tree swallows, the second bird we get. We love tree swallows. They're just beautiful birds. They catch everything in the air. So you can have, if you put a bluebird box in your yard, that the bluebird pair that accepts that box will protect it from other bluebirds. They'll protect an area of 100 yards in diameter approximately around that box, will not let another pair in that territory. In the winter, you might have 5 or 6 or 8 bluebirds come into your deck eating mealworms, but this time of year, a pair will choose a territory and exclude other bluebirds. They don't exclude other birds, only other bluebirds, because the other bluebirds hunt the same way they do. They're protecting their hunting ground. The tree swallows catch everything in the air. So you could put two bluebird boxes in your yard, 10 feet apart. You won't get bluebirds in both of them. You won't get tree swallows in both of them, but you might get bluebirds in one and tree swallows in the other. And we have one golf course where we have, instead of boxes 100 yards apart, we have them every 50 yards apart. And we get bluebird, tree swallow down the line, and it works out. Plus, tree swallows usually only nest once a year. So as soon as they're done nesting, that box is then available for a bluebird. So you could get if you have one box in your yard, you can get tree swallows first and then bluebirds the second and third time, because bluebirds nest 2 to 3 times a summer around here. So the tree swallow. The third biggest one we get are Carolina chickadees, and we don't get a lot of them, but we get a few. And they'll nest in a bluebird box. House wrens will nest in a bluebird box. We'll talk about them a little bit more. Not the Carolina wren. That's the Carolina wren. Carolina wren's the one with the stripe on his eye. We've only had out of 1,000 boxes around the state that we monitored last year. We only had 2 Carolina wrens that nested in a box. They usually nest in crazy places, like in your barbecue grill, in a boot you left out on the back porch, sometimes on a wreath in your front door, although that's usually house finches. But Carolina wrens rarely nest in a bluebird box, but house wrens do. Tufted titmice will nest in a bluebird box. We've had a few of those, not very many, but they sometimes do. White-breasted nuthatch. Around the state, I think we have 1 or 2 boxes of white-breasted nuthatches last year. Prothonotary warblers, most of you have never heard of those. I really didn't know much about them. They nest in bluebird boxes. They love bluebird boxes, but they generally are only found in wet areas, swampy areas, near a river or someplace like that. We do have upland between the lakes in Tennessee. We have a monitor up there who had, I think he had like 15 or so boxes of prothonotary warblers last year. And at the Seven Islands State Bluebird Park over east of Knoxville, they had several boxes of these birds over there last year. But they're beautiful birds. I've never seen one in person, but they will possibly nest in a bluebird box. And purple martins generally nest in a colony. You've seen the giant purple martin boxes with a whole bunch of holes. I think we had one in the past couple of years that nested in a box, but it's possible. So feeding bluebirds. Bluebirds eat 70% of their diet as insects: caterpillars, spiders, grasshoppers, crickets. When the babies are little, they catch spiders and feed them. As the babies get bigger, they feed them caterpillars. As they get bigger yet, they stuff grasshoppers and caterpillars down their throat. You wonder how they can the bird can even swallow it, but they do. In the winter, they generally eat fruit, berries, dogwood berries, hollyberries, pokewood berries, and they'll come to your deck and eat mealworms. Even in the winter, they can find insects, either flying around on a sunny day or under bark or so forth. But they survive nicely all winter long here. My daughter lives in northern Ohio, and she has bluebirds that stay all winter up there. But a lot of winter bluebirds up north head south in the winter. In fact, some of them probably come down here and spend the winter down in Tennessee before they head back north again. But ours generally stay here year round. There's a bluebird on my deck, got a little caterpillar in his mouth, and he was ready to take that to his babies. If you see them with something in their mouth not eating it, they got babies. If they don't have babies yet, they'll gobble that right down. there's a katydid. It was a rainy day. The bluebird was soaking wet and had a katydid ready to take in the box with the babies in there and feed them. And then if you put mealworms out, they especially like live mealworms. You can buy them at a feed store. The best place to buy them is online at Sunshine Mealworms is one place. Go to Amazon, you can find a million places that sell live mealworms. They come to you in the mail. You buy 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000 at a time. They'll be 100% live. You put them, separate them a little into multiple containers. Keep them in your refrigerator. They go dormant in the refrigerator. Take them out every day to feed them to the bluebirds. You don't want to feed them. I know people that feed them hundreds of mealworms every day. Mealworms are calcium depleting. So you can either dust them in calcium carbonate so they get some of their calcium that they're not getting from the mealworms, or I only feed them. I feed them about, I have 2 cups. I put about 10 in each cup in the morning. The birds come at the same time. Male goes to 1 cup, female goes to the other, and they get some mealworms. I get some pictures, but you want them to go out and continue to catch hard-shelled insects because that's where they get all their vitamins and minerals. It's like you eating tiramisu every day. It tastes great, but you're not getting all the vitamins and minerals you need. So I feed them mealworms, but not by the hundreds like I know some people do. They also will come from suet because if you mix it out of real lard, that's like animal fat, like what they get from insects. But again, I don't overfeed them so that's all they're eating is food that I give them. I want them to go out and continue to get the food that they need for a balanced diet. So if you have a bluebird box, they're starting to begin to think about nesting right now. Usually we say it's the 3rd week in March around here in Tennessee. Somebody has a nest already around me over here in Crossville. I think there's a nest or 2 down near Chattanooga, but generally they start about now or another couple weeks. So if you see a nest in your box, bluebird nests, I've only seen them made out of 2 materials around here. One is pine needles, like white pine needles, and it'd be almost all pine needles, maybe a little bit of dead grass woven in there. Very neat nest, not a lot of other materials. That's a bluebird nest. Here's a bluebird nest made out of all dead grass. That's another typical bluebird nest. Those are the 2 kinds of nests I generally see. You see, it's very neat. Not some birds make a real messy nest. They make a very neat nest. Here's a bluebird nest with baby just hatched. Bluebirds lay their egg once they build the nest. They lay 1 egg a day, just 1 a day, and all 4 or 5 eggs are laid. And only then do they start sitting in the nest, so that when they're in the nest after they're all laid, 14 days later, they all hatch at the same time. So this one just hatched, brand new baby. I always say his brothers and sisters are going to be hatching here within the next couple of hours. Every once in a while, an egg doesn't hatch, and the mother usually takes it out and takes it away, just under the nest, because she doesn't want predators to identify there's a nest up above. If you see a nest like this in your yard, in your box, usually the material is a little coarser, like straw, always has feathers in it, white eggs. That is a tree swallow nest. And every once in a while, a bluebird will have white eggs. We have 2 different at the UT Ag Center here in Crossville and at Roan State campus here in Crossville. We have a nest of birds in each place that have had white eggs 2 years in a row. But you can tell by the type of nest, and you can also tell by the bird going in and out what nest it is. There's a tree swallow nest. Again, these babies just hatched, but they always have feathers, and they're duck feathers. They're not the bird's own feathers. If you have moss with plant material and animal fur, it is a Carolina chickadee nest, and we get a few of those. If you have a nest full of sticks like this, a box full of sticks, that is a house wren. And we generally throw the house wren sticks out. If we're there too late and the female builds a nest on top of those sticks, we leave it because it's a native bird. We don't want to harm it. But a house sparrow male will fill every cavity it can find with sticks. and then hoping to attract the female to one of those places to build a nest. In the meantime, all the other boxes or holes in the tree are unavailable for other birds because they're filled with sticks. So we throw the sticks out, hoping that the female will build in one of the other places and have the box available for another native bird, a tree swallow or bluebird. But if you wait and don't check your box every week, and all of a sudden there's a nest on top of those sticks, then the house wren is federally protected, and you're supposed to leave it there. And we do that. Usually we get the sticks out on time, though. So what goes on inside that box? I told you a little bit about this already. That we generally say that in Tennessee they nest from April to August. In March, start building. April, things really start cooking. By the end of August, almost every box is empty. I think last year we had 2 boxes out of 350 in my county that still had some babies that hadn't fledged yet. And they nest 2 to 3 times a year. So as soon as the babies leave, you take out the nest, throw it in the garbage, because we don't want the nest to stack up and get too close to the hole where someone can reach in there and get the babies. And we want to throw out that old nest, which might have lice, mites, blowfly larvae in it. You want them to start with fresh material. So, and the babies never go back once they leave the nest. Takes 5 or 6 days to lay the eggs. They lay 1 a day. Takes 2 weeks for them to hatch, and then 16 to 20 days after hatching, the babies leave the box, fly away. When they leave the box, sometimes they fly to a low bush or ground. I've usually seen them leave the box, first flight, they fly a block or a half a block away to the tallest tree you can see. They just take out of the hole and fly straight up to a tall tree. And then once nesting starts, we monitor the boxes once a week.
Alexa, turn the volume down.
And we check to make sure the babies don't pop out. After they're 12 days old, they could possibly jump out. You got to be very careful, because if they jump out, you can put them back, but they will never stay and they won't survive. So after their 12 days, you have to peek in very carefully. We like boxes where the door opens down instead of up, so we can peek in without opening the box too wide. And then you clean out the box, and we just scrape it out with a scraper. Some people splash some water in there, or maybe clean it out with a 5% solution of a bleach with water. That's not necessary, but you can do that. We don't use any chemicals. If you can't see in very easily, so you can use a small mirror, and we like every week we go in, we count the number of eggs, we count the number of babies, and we keep track of how many babies fledge, and we report that information on up through the Tennessee Bluebird Society, onto the North American Bluebird Society. And if you can't see, you don't want to disturb them, you can look with a mirror like that. Often the mother will fly. Bluebirds usually fly out when you approach. Sometimes they'll sit tight. Tree swallows often sit tight, and you can look in. If we can't count eggs, we'll count babies next week. But if they fly out, as soon as you leave and are 50, 100 yards away, they'll go back in the box. On golf courses, we have to go early in the morning because of the golfers, too many golfers out there to get by. But really the best time to monitor is in the afternoon, because in the morning is when the female lays the eggs, and she lays 1 egg a day, usually in the morning, and you don't want to open that box if she's in the process of laying an egg. But on golf courses, we really don't have a choice. So we have to peek in carefully and make sure nobody's in there trying to lay an egg in the morning. Plus it's warmer in the afternoon, and if there's eggs in there, we don't want to chase her off the eggs when it's cold outside, even though she'll go back immediately. But we just as soon monitor in the afternoon if we can. But in the morning, we see on deer, otters, mink, all kinds of fun things in the morning when you get out there to go monitor. So here's some opportunities. I don't want to just tell you about bluebirds and say, well, thanks for listening. I want to give you a chance I want you to think about some opportunities. Number one, you can attract bluebirds to your deck with suet or mealworms. And you saw the suet feeder. I take a log, drill some holes in it, put it in there. The bluebirds can hang on the side and eat the suet that way. And mealworms, I put them in a little cup, and they'll come, and it might take them a week to find them. Once they find them, they'll come every day to check out for mealworms. So you can attract them that way. Number two, you can put a nest box in your yard. And Your nest box, as I said, should open, it should have an 1.5-inch hole. You should mount it on a pole with a predator guard. And I'll tell you, when I put a nest box in somebody's yard, many times before I get home, I have a phone call. They're already checking out my box. They see that hole and they are checking it out. Even in the middle of the winter, you put a nest box out there, they're immediately checking it out as a possible place to build a nest next year. So they're around, they'll spot that nest box in no time. You can join the Tennessee Bluebird Society. You can go to find the Tennessee Bluebird Society website. It's $15 a year to join. That $15 gets you a newsletter 4 times a year, but that $15 goes to help us put boxes in public places. And around the state, we have 1,000 boxes in parks, sewage treatment plants, on streets, on the grassy strip in the middle of streets, golf courses, and that's where we get the money to do that from people that join the Tennessee Bluebird Society. You can also join the North American Bluebird Society, and if you go online and find that, and you get a beautiful magazine 4 times a year that you'll learn. Every time I get it, I learn a lot more about bluebirds. That's a great opportunity there. You can start a bluebird trail. We say a bluebird trail is usually 5 boxes. You can start with 3. Put a bluebird trail someplace, one in your backyard, a couple other places around the neighborhood, and check them on a weekly basis. Keep track of them, and make sure that the birds are using them, and that there's not a mouse nest in there or wasp nest, and you can help the birds that way. A great thing we can do is start a Tennessee Bluebird Society club. Now, let me show you. We have 5 here. These numbers are where members are. Tennessee Bluebird Society members are located around the state. Down here, 23 Chattanooga Club, Loudoun County Club over in Tellico Village, the Cumberland County Club where I'm located, Cookeville Club, and the one in Shelby County over near Memphis. But what you'll notice is there is no club in Davidson County. And where we get clubs, we get more members, we get more boxes. Here's where boxes are around the state. We have 368 boxes. These are all in public places, not in backyards. These are in public places where we've added boxes where we can raise bluebirds. And we've added 14 more this year. And in Loudoun, there's 344, you see. Chattanooga just started, the club just started last year. They already have 85 boxes in public parks. They're adding 30 more this year. Cookeville has 46 boxes. They're adding 27 more. There are 50 boxes in Warner Park, and there are 14 in Ellington Ag Center, but these numbers could be up here in the 300s. You got a big area, lots of parks, lots of golf courses. We just don't have a club to go and do that in that area. I would really start there because the club adds new trails and nest boxes. They use only approved boxes. They put them on poles with predator guards. Public becomes more aware of bluebirds. There's a lower membership fee. If you join a club, the membership fee drops based on the number of members you have. If you have 25 members, it's only $5 a year. And the Tennessee Bluebird Society gives grant money to clubs to add boxes. Last year, we gave each of the 5 existing clubs $400 to add new boxes in public areas. So that's the advantage. But to start a club, you need somebody. You need somebody to take charge, to step up, say, I'm interested in this. I know a couple people. I'd like to get started. In the past, I'd just say, hey, if anybody wants to start a club, let me know. And that just hadn't worked. But if somebody out there says, I'm interested, I think we can get a club started. I'll come over there as many times as necessary to meet with you, get you started, show you how to make Bluebird boxes. Show you how you can get approval to put them on golf courses or public parks. We have them in state parks, county parks, public parks. And I'd really like to get something started over in Warner Park area, Davidson County. Somebody says, I'm interested, contact me. There's my contact information. I work really well with email, Don.Hazel@gmail.com. or call me. I really want to get something going. I'd like to see the numbers that we have around the state in other places in Davidson County, just like we have in some of these are smaller counties with smaller populations. There's a great opportunity over there. So that is all I have, and I'll answer questions if Rachel, if you want to read any questions, if that's how we want to do it, we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Don. That was so fascinating. I loved hearing all that information and finding out what the different nests look like and the predators. That was really fascinating. So I appreciate that. We definitely had more people sign on. Once again, everyone, I apologize that some of you got a participant or a panelist Zoom link or webinar link and others an attendee link. So I don't have any new questions. I'm going to go back. There's one that says, what constitutes a Bluebird box? I have several houses for cavity nesters with openings between. So did you say in your presentation how large the opening
I'll tell you a couple of things about it. The hole needs to be 1.5 inches in diameter exactly. 1 1/8 Bluebird can't get in the hole. Chickadee could, but a bluebird can't. So 1.5 inches in diameter. It doesn't need to be any bigger than that. There's a Bluebird box, if anybody might be familiar with it, called a Peterson box, and it's kind of a slanted box, and it calls for an oval shaped hole. However, I found we had a couple of those that we took over monitoring. Starlings can get into an oval shaped hole, even though it's not exactly 1.5 inches wide, but it's deeper. And so 1.5 inch round hole is perfect for a Bluebird box. If you can go online, you can find the website for North American Bluebird Society, North American Bluebird Society. I think it's nabluebirdsociety.org might be what it is. And that you can find plans how to build a box there. There's a number of different plans. The one we use most is called the Eastern Western Bluebird Box. Just very generic name, Eastern Western Bluebird Box. I've been using that box for 25 years. It works great. The only modification I made the roof a little bigger for a bigger overhang so the weather doesn't get into the box. And I make it so the door opens down, the hinges on the bottom, it opens down rather than up. But you can find plans there. Don't buy a box that has a perch on the front of it. That attracts house sparrows. Don't buy those little boxes with a peaked roof. Those aren't very, very good. And the box should be deep. The distance down from the hole to the bottom should be at least 4.5 to 6 inches deep, so that predators can't easily get in there, reach in there and get something. People often say also, you can read somewhere the box should face to the east. If possible, that's fine. The reason they say face to the east, the sun shines on the box in the east and warms up the babies that way. And the weather usually comes from the west, so the weather doesn't blow in the hole and get them wet. But if your box is in your yard and the east is in the woods and the west is your open grassy yard, you would want it to face west in that case, because if you face the box into the yard, you're more likely to get wrens or chickadees or nothing. If you face it towards the open grassy area, you're more likely to get bluebirds. So we always face the box to an open grassy area. Doesn't matter which compass direction it is. And around in my area, we have boxes facing every single possible directions, and we get bluebirds in all of them. So, and I just checked recently, out of the 350 boxes we monitor, the 90% of them get bluebirds every year. It's not always the same ones, but each year about 10% of the boxes, for some reason, don't get a nest. The next year it might, or the last year it might have, but they kind of move around, and sometimes you have an empty box. So if you put a box in your yard, you would get bluebirds right away. Don't worry, you may get them the second or third nesting, or you may get them next year. And let's see, any other questions?
Okay. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on surveillance cameras inside boxes? What are the pros and cons?
Yes, yes, I do. We started this year over here in our club. We started to make Bluebird boxes. We make them a little taller than normal, and we make put a little shelf in there, and we mount a Blink outdoor camera. The Blink outdoor camera works fabulous in there. It's just a little camera. It's wireless. They claim the batteries last 2 years. I find that hard to believe, but I've had one in my backyard watching wildlife since October, all winter long, through all the cold weather, and the battery are still good. So you can put that in and that camera has an infrared light in it also, so you can see in the box night and day. And the way I put it in there, I mount a little shelf where the box fits, or it comes with a mounting bracket. You aim it so that it looks at both the hole and the bottom of the box. So you can see the parents coming with the food in their mouth, and you can see the babies down below, and you can see them day and night. The box works off of Wi-Fi. The camera works off of Wi-Fi in your house. It can be, mine is probably from right where I'm sitting right now. My box is probably 150 feet out in the backyard right now. It's not in the box. It's looking at fox and deer at night, but it's 150 feet away and it works fine. You can't put one in 200 yards away. It won't work because your Wi-Fi doesn't go that far. But you can buy the box, the Blink outdoor camera, little black camera. Don't get the indoor one. Don't get the Wise camera. Blink outdoor camera. You have to buy the kit. Don't buy an add-on camera. Buy the 1 camera kit or the 2 camera kit or the 10 camera kit. It comes with a little controller that plugs into your computer or a wall outlet, and the cameras work off of that, and you can record what's in there. You can see what's in there anytime. I put one of those cameras by my front door. It works like a Ring doorbell almost. There's no button to push, but anybody that shows up, my cell phone dings. I can see them and say, oh, the mail lady just delivered a package today. Or I have one in my backyard and I can see the deer going through the yard at 3 in the morning. And the other ones I put in the Bluebird boxes, and I can watch the birds in there. So that's the camera to get, the Blink outdoor camera. And you don't have to have a little shelf like I put in there. You can just mount the box inside to the bottom of the roof or the backside and aim it down, and it will work. That's a great question. Yeah. Oh, somebody said Radnor Lake is a great place to brew prothonotary warblers. Great. I may have to go to see one live because I never have. Okay, somebody said they have a second year and the battery's still working. So maybe their 2-year thing is good. One other thing, Blink cameras. I bought mine $99 for 2 of them online at Amazon back in October. The price goes up and down. Right now, they're $179 for 2. That's the standard price. But before you buy them, check Walmart, Amazon, and Best Buy, or maybe other places, because they're not always $179 for 2. Sometimes the price goes up. It doesn't go above that, but sometimes the price comes down. You might look for a sale, and you might get a better price than that. Anything else? Oh, any particular calcium carbonate? I see that question. Any particular? I've read that you should get food grade calcium carbonate, and you can. I know they have that at the feed store. I don't know where else they have some, but yeah, I've read that you should dust your mealworms in calcium carbonate, especially if you're feeding a lot of them. I feed 10 a day. I feed 10 in one bowl, 10 in the other. I don't put the calcium carbonate on mine because I'm not feeding them that many. But I see people that put 100 mealworms out there, and that's just too much of one thing.
Yeah,
is what I've read.
Can I put this a little? I mean, mealworms are great, but really the best thing you can do is to provide insects, and so that means not spraying your yard with pesticides and planting native plants so that there are plenty of insects. So
Laura, that's a good point. You know, last year over here, we had those army worms. I don't know if you had them over where you are, and they just ate everybody's lawn. They just totally destroyed lawns. So everybody had their lawn sprayed. So this year, all the lawn care companies are saying, hey, for an extra $100, we'll spray your whole lawn so that you don't get any insects this year. And I'm concerned that a lot of people do that, because that's where the bluebirds get their food, is off your lawn, and all the insects are going to be either killed or they're going to have pesticide on them. So you know, I write an article in the paper every 2 weeks. I'm going to be hated by the lawn care companies because I'm going to recommend that you don't spray your yard, because those army worms were a once in a decade or more occurrence. I seriously doubt we're going to see them again. So I don't think you need to spray your yard at all. So yeah, that's a good, thank you, Laura. That was a good point.
Yeah, and Laura, I think you had a couple of more comments to share about the birds that we've had at Warner.
Yeah, just a couple of things. When Don, I was taking notes when you were talking. One of the things I wanted to mention about tree swallows and bluebirds is we've had really good success at Warner Parks with doing back-to-back poles. So you have a pole facing one direction with a bluebird, and like literally inches away, a foot away, have another box facing another direction. And we've had bluebirds nesting in one box, simultaneously tree swallows. I mean, they're right next to each other.
Yeah.
So if you have a small space, you can put boxes really, really close together and they're fine, like John said.
Yeah, tree swallows are they're everywhere, but they're not everywhere because they like generally more open areas. We have one golf course where we get a ton of tree swallows, and they're just everywhere, and it's great. But we have other golf courses where we get no tree swallows because it's not as wide open. Maybe there's the fairways are tighter, lots of trees. So just, you know, in my yard, I had tree swallows last year until the wrens poked holes in their eggs. But that was rare. Usually you'll get tree swallows in more open areas, but if you get them, I like tree swallows just as much as bluebirds. They're fabulous birds. And they're even friendlier than bluebirds. You can, you know, almost walk right up to them. They'll be sitting on top of the box until you get maybe 5 feet away. So yeah, bluebirds and tree swallows get along fine. They sometimes battle for the box early in the spring. It's not a battle with blood, but they are chasing each other around, seeing who gets the box. And then the one who doesn't goes and finds another box often. Bluebirds will sometimes fight pretty bad fights. I had 2 of them in my backyard last year wrestling on the ground. I thought I'll just walk out there and they'll fly away and save somebody's life. They flew away. As soon as I left, they were back at it, trying to see who was going to get that box. So yeah, but usually nobody dies. It's just like they get beat up a little bit and they have to go find another territory. Anything else? Anybody that has questions, you had my email, don.hazel@gmail.com. Feel free to send me an email if you have a further question. And if somebody thinks they or somebody they know might want to start a club over there, I'd love to get one started to get more boxes in parks like Warner Park. We have parks that there's only room for 2 bluebird boxes, and we put them in there and we get bluebirds. Just small city parks. I'd love to get that started someplace. So feel free to contact me. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Don and Laura. We will, you know, we've recorded this, so we will be making this available to everyone. We have your emails from where you signed up for this program. Again, apologies for my name being slapped over everyone's screen. Thank you for understanding these technical difficulties. And so, you know, sometimes it takes about a week for us to get this video together and out on our YouTube, and we'll send that link out to everyone at that point. But thank you so much, Don and Laura. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for joining tonight. And you know, watch our calendar of events, and we've got more to come like this. So everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.